This is NMH at 1, and we bring you the news making headlines across Namibia, Africa, and the globe, read to you by Diana Master. Here's what to expect in today's broadcast. Namibia's First Lady speaks to women in the Kharas region about psychosocial challenges. ReconAfrica proceedings continue in the Windhoek High Court. West African migrants rescued last week in northern Niger. No plans? No worries. Our weekend guide will help you locate exactly what to do. These stories and more coming to you all through this lunch hour. In today's midday news update, the Kharas State of Region address took place today in Windhoek. Yolanda Nell attended the event.
It is imperative for us to love what we are, embrace our original vision, and keep on reminding ourselves who we are, what we stand for, where we want to go, and why we want to go there. On the economic sector, Honorable Chairperson and honorable members, the general unemployment in the region and youth unemployment, particularly for the youth aged 15 to 34, stand at an alarming 43%, of which 40 are male and 46 are female. As such, unemployment among the young people in the Kharas region, as it nationally remains a fundamental challenge as it leads to the prevailing social and economic issues faced by our young people in the region. The impact of COVID-19 and economic crisis further exacerbated the plight of the youth who are left to scramble for limited employment opportunities.
Do remember to engage us on our social media platforms and leave your thoughts in the comments as we share stories from local communities on the other side of this short break in our visual news segment. Now getting into today's visual news clips, the First Lady of Namibia, Monica Geingoes, engaged women in the Kharas region recently about psychosocial challenges faced within the community. Monique Adams was there.
Majority of people who commit gender-based violence are not arrested. They live amongst us. It's our husbands, it's our brothers, it's our fathers, it's our cousins, it's our friends, it's our comrades, it's people we know. So if I know that my friend, my brother, my cousin is beating his wife, or if I know that my friend who is a woman is abusing her husband, what is it that I should do? Do I gossip about it with other people? Because by talking about it to others, does it solve the problem? So often we do have three things that we need to think about. Firstly, we need to think of it is a generational curse. When you are raised in a house where you see this, it often finds its way in your own house. Whether it's either through accepting that this is okay behavior, or whether it's your child, your daughter starting to accept if her husband beats her that it's normal because I watched my mother being beaten, or your son thinking, if my wife upsets me, I can beat her because that's what I saw in my house. So it's a curse that you're passing down to a generation when you leave this. But secondly, there's also something in our spirits that knows something is not right. What do we do, especially in these complicated cases, where you know the woman either can't leave, whether it's you yourself, you know you can't leave, or you need to protect children? Because this thing of saying, just leave, it's very easy advice, because most women get hurt the most when they leave. You cannot tell a woman, just leave. Why don't you leave? Because she's at most at risk when you leave. Financially, physically, emotionally.
Today is the third day of the ReconAfrica case currently being heard in the Windhoek High Court. Here's a recap of yesterday's proceeding by Yolanda Nell.
Since Wednesday, the ReconAfrica case is being heard in court. A number of conservancies and one of their umbrella organizations approached the Windhoek High Court with a request to put a stop to the Namibian Environmental Commissioner and other co-defendants, including the Namibian subsidiary of the Canadian gas and oil exploration company Renaissance Energy Africa. Yesterday, the defense was still walking Judge Isishiming Chase through their heads of argument and counterclaims. The Algemeine Zeitung reported that the issue at hand is to determine whether A. the plaintiffs were even entitled to bring suit on behalf of their communities, B. whether the suit, which is dismissed by the Environmental Commissioner as lacking merit, does have merit at all, and C. whether the application should even be heard in the High Court. The Environmental Commissioner contends that any appeals should have been made to himself and not the High Court.
It's a Friday, and you know what that means. We have Michael Kayunde to share with us what the social scene has on offer for this weekend to help you populate your calendar. Let's have a look.
Hello NMH at 1 viewers, my name is Michael Kayunde and I'm back on your TV screens to give you a lowdown of some of the events that are taking place this weekend. To start with, you can catch Chill Sessions, that is on Namibian Sun's Facebook page at 1900 hours. That is the show where we get to count down the latest music videos that are trending in the country for the week. Moving along, the Black Line, an exhibition by Kabelo Kim, opens today at 1800 at the Project Room. And moving along with our updates, if you are headed to the coast, please make sure that you catch Ryan Smith performing at Soundgarden tonight. Tickets are $20 after 1800 hours. So those are some of the events that are taking place this weekend. Make sure that you have fun responsibly. From me, Michael, until next time, it's bye-bye.
Now, after the break, we take a look at the news headlining Namibia's daily newspapers. Stay with us. Thank you for staying with NMH at 1. Now let's take a look at what the lead stories are in Namibia's daily newspapers. Bank BIC Namibia has confirmed that the perceived reputational risk of its main shareholder, Isabel dos Santos, has contributed to the bank's failure to increase its local ownership more than 6 years after being instructed to do so by the Bank of Namibia. Namibian Sun reports that it is dos Santos' stake in the bank that BON wants to see reduced in a bid to avoid another SME bank-like debacle. Dos Santos' assets have been frozen in various jurisdictions, including her native Angola, due to allegations of embezzlement and money laundering, claims she flatly denies. In another story, the paper reports that affirmative repositioning leader Job Amupanda told rebellious activists who are demanding rotation for the movement's Windhoek council seats that AR is not August 26, the state-owned manufacturing company resorting under the Ministry of Defense, which is allegedly used by army generals to loot money, insinuating AR is being used in the same way by some of its activists. A widely circulated letter by the movement's national spokesperson, Simon Amunime, put in the open the revolt within AR over issues of both accountability and individual survival. In the letter, Amunime reveals there was a suggestion to rotate occupancy of the movement's 2 seats in the Windhoek Municipal Council so that the unemployed activists too may earn a living. The Namibian Sun's page 3 reports on a World Bank study which has advised government to consider allowing Namibians to access their future retirement savings to fund their mortgages. The bank noted that while Namibia's banking fundamentals are generally solid, the capacity to extend housing lending is constrained by high existing ratios of housing lending to other types of debt and by dwindling household affordability. The recommendations are contained in a country diagnostic titled Creating Markets in Namibia and come amid previous plans by the Namibia Financial Institutions Supervisory Authority to implement regulations as per the Financial Institutions Market Act that would only allow retirement fund members to access 25% of their pensions at retirement or resignation before the age of 55. Moving over to the Republicans' front page, it takes us to Vidvlei, where the community marched to the town council yesterday in protest against poor service delivery, alleged corruption, nepotism, mismanagement, and a feeling that they were being ignored by the government. The group also has a motion of no confidence in the town councillors announced. According to Pamela Chirare of the Vidvlei Voice of the Voiceless group, their calls for intervention to the Deputy Minister of Urban and Rural Development have fallen on deaf ears. Several letters dating as far back as 28 October 2021, which were written to Goagosis, in which she was asked to intervene due to the lack of feedback from the village council. The Deputy Minister said yesterday when contacted that she's not going to interfere. According to her, the community must follow the procedures and the related minister, Erastus Utoni, approaching the mandate to intervene. Republican on its page 2 reports that fishrot accused Tamson Fiti Hatuyukulipi has told the court that he didn't have fishing quotas nor sell any. That's the state's version. They say, I did no work. I brought the evidence that I did work for Samherji, for which they paid me, said Hatuyukulipi, who was on the stand for the second day yesterday in his bail application currently being heard in the Windhoek High Court. The state has not yet had an opportunity for cross-examination, but this is expected to start today after his main testimony is completed. Now, the Allgemeine Zeitung on its page 1 reports on a conversation with the spokesperson of Headspring Investments, who has explained the correct company location and shared comments on guarantees and water sampling. On its page 3, Allgemeine Zeitung reports that fishrot accused Tamson Hatuyukulipi allegedly brought the Iceland company embroiled in the fishing quota scandal to Namibia. According to one of Hatuyukulipi's cousins, he acted as the main intermediary and brought Icelandic fishing giant Samherji to Namibia. He was responsible for contacting individuals whose fishing quotas Samherji needed to fish in Namibian waters. We're now going to take a quick ad break, and when we return, we get into the second half of our newspaper review. The Namibian newspaper starts off our second half of the newspaper review, and on its front page it leads with statistics that 160,800 teenage pregnancies have been recorded since 2010. About 1 in 4 girls in Namibia will become pregnant before they turn 20, as some 160,800 teenage pregnancies were recorded in the country from 2010 to 2022. In some years, the teenage pregnancy rate is higher than the rate at which pupils advance to tertiary education. From 2018 to 2021, teenage pregnancies stood at 56,300, while the number of grade 12 pupils who qualified for university stood at 37,480, the paper reports. In another story, 1.5 million Namibians, which are more than half the population, have experienced moderate or severe food insecurity over the last 2 years, according to the latest United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization report. 58% of Namibians are food insecure, an increase from 53% in 2014. On the Namibian page 3, a gender-based violence victim-friendly courtroom was opened officially yesterday by Justice Minister Yvonne Dauseb and Chief Justice Peter Shivute. The court is at the Windhoek Magistrates Court in Katutura, and it is the first in the country to be specialized in the hearing of gender-based violence cases, according to Dauseb. In another story, the fishrot scandal whistleblower Johannes Stephenson was a main topic of discussion as the bail hearing of a key figure in the criminal case with Tamson Hatuyukulipi was testifying for the second day of his bail hearing, stating that Stephenson cannot be trusted. We move on over to New Era, and it reports that political analysts have said the failure of the city of Windhoek governing coalition does not only affect residents negatively, but also crushes any hope for cooperation on a national level by opposition parties. Pundits painted a bleak picture of affairs at the city, saying the capital is now fertile ground for personality clashes as opposed to ideas and service delivery, reports the paper. New Era's page 3 reports that the Ministry of Gender Equality, Poverty Eradication and Social Welfare paid $5 million Namibian per month in grants to 4,156 deceased beneficiaries and 249 individuals with expired disability grant status. This was revealed by the Minister Doreen Sioka in Parliament on Wednesday, stating that this error had been picked up by the new integrated social assistance system. Moving over to Market Watch, the prices of goods and services in Namibia increased by a significant 6% during June 2022, the highest inflation rate recorded since June 2017, according to the Namibia Statistics Agency. This represents a 1.9 percentage point increase when compared to 4.1% recorded in June 2021. In May 2022, the inflation rate stood at 5.4%. Transport, food, and non-alcoholic beverages categories continue to be the main drivers of inflation. Overall transport inflation stood at 18.6%, while food and non-alcoholic beverages recorded 7%. Now, a rough diamond factory that was officially opened in Windhoek Prosperita this week will contribute to eradicating unemployment among youth and women. More on this coming right up after the break. Headlining our economic news, a rough diamond factory that was officially opened in Windhoek Prosperita this week will contribute to eradicating unemployment among youth and women, owners say. Andre Masika, a supplier of polished diamonds to the luxury jewelry market, has invested in a factory in Namibia, giving his company, Andre Masika Diamonds, direct access to De Beers rough supply for the first time. Tourism Minister Pohamba Shifeta at the opening of the factory, Parcel Rough Diamonds, said progressive business ventures of this nature should be recognized for the impact they have on the Namibian economy, especially with regards to job creation, as well as the socio-economic impact on the nation at large. According to him, Masika has become one of the most sought-after brands globally and is dubbed to be a game-changer in the diamond industry because of its focus and dedication on innovation. He said Masika's association with Namib Desert Diamonds will therefore make Namibia more attractive to all celebrities associated and affiliated with the brand, which will in turn positively impact the tourism sector. At the moment, 50% of Masika's workforce consists of people with various disabilities, and his commitment to empowering the previously marginalized portion of the society is very impressive and highly commendable, Shifeta said. Shifeta said this initiative will contribute towards tourism development, as it will not only enhance national efforts to promote tourism, but will also create employment opportunities and enhance the transfer of skills and appropriate technology to our people. In our next story, Bank BIC Namibia CEO Lindsay Crawford is optimistic the bank will turn the financial tide towards the end of 2023 after struggling to get onto its feet since its inception. Shareholders in the Angolan-backed lender have incurred accumulated losses to the value of 218 million Namibian dollars since 2016. Despite this anomaly, the bank's shareholders, including Banco BIC Angola SA, have so far pumped 600 million Namibian dollars into the entity. The bank made a total comprehensive loss of 53.9 million Namibian dollars for the 2021 financial year, with this attributable to its shareholders standing at 51.2 million Namibian dollars for 2021 alone. Crawford, in his response to Namibian Sun queries this week, believes the bank is a focal point for trade between Namibia and Angola and its fee structure is competitive. Initial capital and operational costs are exceptionally high in a business of this nature. We do not have economies of scale, which will happen moving forward, he said. Millions of dollars apart from one incident of staff member-related fraud. Crawford said the bank has not written off any bad credit debts since it started operations. It has, however, been unable to rein in its losses over the years, with its year-on-year loss growing by 8.2 million Namibian dollars for 2021 and 2020. A look at its income statement for the same period indicates that the bank generated 16.2 million Namibian dollars in net interest income after impairment of loans and advances. Now it's time to take a look at the economic indicators. The Namibian dollar has increased in value when weighed against the US dollar and British pound. The euro and US dollar will both cost you just over 17 Namibian dollars. Capricorn Investment Group Ltd stock prices have dropped by 15.2% on the NSX, while MTC stock prices are down by 12.5%, now trading at 7 Namibian dollars. SBN Holdings stock prices have also dropped, now trading at 4 Namibian dollars and 20 cents. All commodity prices have fallen, with the exception of Brent crude oil, which increased in price by 0.10%. Now, 44 West African migrants were rescued last week in northern Niger while trying to enter Libya. The full story coming up after the break.
Bookings for Namibia Tourism Expo 2022 are open. The expo will take place from 3 to 5 November 2022 in Windhoek. To secure your booking, visit nte.nmh.com.na, and for more information on the expo, follow all Namibia Media Holdings platforms. The expo is supported by the Ministry of Environment, Tourism and Forestry, Namibia Tourism Board, FENATA, City of Windhoek, and Namibia Media Holdings. Namibia Tourism Expo, taking tourism to the regions.
You're still watching NMH at 1. We now take a look at the news from Africa and later on extend to the rest of the globe. The UN says 44 West African migrants were rescued last week in northern Niger while trying to enter Libya. The International Organization for Migration says they were stranded in the desert for 2 days after their vehicle broke down. The 29 men, 12 women and 3 girls were found near the town of Durko in northeastern Niger. In late June, the military in Niger said the bodies of 10 migrants were found near the Libyan border. Many West African migrants try to reach Europe via Libya and the Mediterranean Sea. There have been numerous reports of people being abused in Libyan detention centers and migrants being abandoned in the desert by smuggling gangs. In our next story, the Economic Community of a West African States Court has declared as illegal the 7-month suspension of Twitter by Nigerian authorities last year. The decision follows a complaint by citizens and human rights organizations in Nigeria against the state filed in July 2021, a month after the ban on the US social network began in Africa's most populous country. After the suspension, Twitter was reauthorized in January 2022 after negotiations between Abuja and the social network. According to the Court of Justice of ECOWAS, this suspension was illegal and incompatible with the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, writes the institution in this court report sent to AFP. It considered that with this suspension, Nigeria violated the rights of citizens and NGOs at the origin of complaint to enjoy their freedom of expression and access to information and the media. Furthermore, it orders the Nigerian state to ensure that this illegal ban on Twitter is not repeated in the future. Abuja had announced in June 2021 the suspension of Twitter for an indefinite period after accusing the social network of having a suspicious mission against the Nigerian government and of tolerating on its platform the messages of the leader of a separatist group inciting violence in southeast Nigeria. The suspension of Twitter came 2 days after the social network deleted a message from President Muhammadu Buhari. The head of state had threatened to deal with those responsible for the violence in southeastern Nigeria, attributed by the authorities to Igbo separatists in a language they understand, reviving the terrible memories of the Biafran War that left more than 3 million people dead in the 1960s. Now, Moroccan authorities yesterday battled to put out multiple wildfires burning through forests in 4 provinces in the north amid a heat wave. Hundreds of families have been evacuated as a precaution from Larache and Taza provinces, and transport in the areas has been disrupted. No casualties have been reported so far. Firefighters, soldiers, and police officers have been trying to prevent the fires from causing more destruction. But strong winds, the forest's density, and a difficult terrain have slowed the efforts, according to the authorities. The country, which has had intense droughts, has recently been hit by soaring temperatures. It is the heat that causes this kind of fire. It was yesterday at dawn that the fire reached our village. The AFP news agency quoted Ahmed Mezua, a resident of Larache, as saying, "The fire has reportedly burnt at least 1,000 hectares of forest so far in Larache and Ouazane areas." Now, in international news, Saudi Arabia says it will open its airspace to all air carriers, paving the way for more overflights to and from Israel. These stories coming up on the other side of this break.
Market Watch is a daily publication covering the most important market-related topics. You'll find the economic indicators and company news in brief on a daily basis. Market Watch also features interesting and informative focus topics like medical, properties, and cars weekly. The ever-popular classifieds, as well as tenders and vacancies, can also be found in the Market Watch, which is a part of the daily NMH newspapers, namely Republican, Algemene Zeitung, and Namibian Sun, reaching audiences all over the country and possible new clients.
Now let's get into our international news. Saudi Arabia says it will open its airspace to all air carriers, paving the way for more overflights to and from Israel, a further sign that relations between the two countries are warming. The Saudi General Authority of Civil Aviation said on Thursday the country's airspace was now open to all carriers that meet its requirements for overflights, in line with international conventions that say there should be no discrimination between civil aircraft. The decision will complement the efforts aimed at consolidating the kingdom's position as a global hub connecting 3 continents and to enhance international air connectivity, GACA added in a statement. The announcement of an open skies policy by Riyadh will mean shorter flights from Asia to Israel, as airlines serving those routes will no longer be required to take long detours around Saudi Arabia en route to Israel. United States President Joe Biden, who is set to fly to the kingdom from Israel on Friday as part of a regional tour, welcomed Saudi Arabia's move. Earlier on Thursday, a U.S. official told Reuters that Saudi Arabia would soon grant Israeli airlines unfettered overflight access and permit direct charter flights from Israel for Muslims participating in the annual Hajj pilgrimage in Mecca. Israel and Saudi Arabia have no diplomatic relations, and the kingdom does not recognize Israel as a state, one possible reason why the Saudi statement did not refer to Israel by name. In our next story, Sri Lanka's parliament has accepted ousted President Gotabaya Rajapaksa's resignation, ending rule by a family that wielded power for nearly 20 years. Mr. Rajapaksa quit after fleeing to Singapore amid mass protests over his mismanagement of the economy. Sri Lanka is in the grip of an economic chaos as it faces an acute shortage of food, fuel, and other basic supplies. Mr. Rajapaksa's resignation paves the way for the country to begin the process of electing a new president. Sri Lanka's Speaker of Parliament Mahinda Yapa Abiyawadena said on Friday that he accepted Mr. Rajapaksa's resignation, which he received late yesterday. He has called for Parliament to convene on Saturday to start the process of electing a new leader. Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe has been sworn in as acting president. Parliament has up to a month to elect a new leader who could be Mr. Wickremesinghe. Mr. Rajapaksa fled to Singapore on Thursday from the Maldives as huge protests roiled Sri Lanka. He is believed to have wanted to leave Sri Lanka before stepping down in order to avoid the possibility of arrest under a new administration. The embattled leader arrived in Singapore earlier on Thursday after first flying to the Maldives on Tuesday night. Reports say he is accompanied by his wife and 2 bodyguards. Singapore's foreign ministry said Mr. Rajapaksa had not asked for asylum or been granted asylum. Singapore generally does not grant requests for asylum, it added. In the capital, Colombo, yesterday, delighted demonstrators greeted news of the president's departure with dancing. 1 person died and 84 others were injured during Wednesday's protests, which took place at key landmarks around the capital, Colombo, including the Prime Minister's office. Protesters broke into the presidential palace on Saturday and set fire to the Prime Minister's private home. We're now going to take a quick ad break, and when we return, we take a look at the news headlining our local sports scene. Stay with us.
MyZone aims to mold a creative generation with a sound understanding of the power that comes with knowing. MyZone covers 58 schools with over 400 learners for the school newspaper project. 52,000 average monthly social media posts, engagements, and reaching over 100,000 high school learners through the printed school newspaper. Catch the Zone, a weekly publication which covers youth and tertiary news published in the Namibian Sun, Republican, and Algemeine Zeitung every Tuesday.
And now let's cycle into our sports news, starting off with, of course, cycling. The sunny town of Omaruru is expected to welcome more than 150 cyclists who will ride a route through the Irongo Mountains at the Ochohotsu guest farm for the first time ever. The rolling hills of the Irongo Mountains will play host to the next leg of the Gravel and Dirt series powered by Hollard Namibia. Over the weekend, organizer Johan Pretoria said riders can expect an uphill battle from riders like Ingram Cuff, Dricus Kutsia and Gerard Mans Jr. Mans is currently one of the four runners in the Gravel and Dirt series of races and is seemingly eager to become this year's champion. Namibia's Brave Warriors will battle Mozambique today at 4 p.m. in the COSAFA Cup semi-final after both teams beat their opponents in the quarter-final of the tournament being held in Durban, South Africa. Namibia reached the semi-final after beating Madagascar 2-0 via goals from Absalom Imbondi and Wendell Rudolph. Mozambique took out South Africa 5-4 on penalties following a 0-0 draw in normal time. Senegal advanced to the semi-final after beating Eswatini 10-9 on penalties. The Teranga Lions will face the Zambians in the other semi-final also today. In our next story, a newly registered non-governmental organization, National Mental Health Care Namibia, will have its official launch ceremony in the form of a boxing exhibition night slated for 23 July 2022 at the MTC Dome in Swakopmund. The founder of National Mental Health Care Namibia, Kathy Kambanda, explained that the organization was established with the aim to assist Namibians with mental health problems as well as to promote good mental health and well-being amongst the Namibians. We aim to launch not only our 24-hour helpline, but introduce the organization which is ready to help fellow Namibians, she added. Now we take a quick ad break, and when we return, we take a look at the international sports scene. Stay with us.
Careers Hub is Namibia's biggest vacancy hub. The 8-pager does not only provide vacancies to land you a desired position, but also focuses on the corporate world. Profiling experts and individuals who make a difference in their careers and set fields, the publication features a managing director or CEO, movers and shakers, new appointment, SMEs, long service employees, company profiles, as well as news from all kinds of corporates and all things business. It is inserted in the 3 NMH daily newspapers, Namibian Sun, Republican, and Algemeine Zeitung on Fridays. Catch Careers Bistro, the show to complement Careers Hub to hear from these experts and individuals in their set fields. The show is every Friday at 5 on all NMH Facebook pages and on Mondays at 5 on network television.
Kicking off our international sports stories, Jermaine Sioposenwe scored early to set Banyana Banyana on their way to a second successive Women's World Cup as they edged Tunisia 1-0 in Rabat on Thursday, but they made it hard for themselves with a wasteful display. Victory in the quarterfinals of the Women's Africa Cup of Nations tournament in Morocco means South Africa are guaranteed a top 4 finish at the Continental Championship, which serves as qualifying competition for next year's World Cup in Australia and New Zealand. Sibusiso Vilakazi has joined TX Galaxy after his contract with current DStv Premiership champions Mamelodi Sundowns was not renewed. Vilakazi was at Masandawana for 6 seasons. He leaves Sundowns with 5 league titles, the MTN 8 trophy and a CAF Super Cup, having made 138 appearances, scoring 29 goals and providing 21 assists. He becomes the second signing after TX Galaxy announced the arrival of former Orlando Pirates and Amazulu player Kola Mlambo on Tuesday. Now, it might be stretching it to suggest that Saturday's decider in Cape Town is a rerun of the British and Irish Lions series, but Wales coach Wayne Pavak is right when he says the pressure at DHL stadiums is all on the Springboks. By winning in Bloemfontein last week, Wales already exceeded most expectations for the Castle Lager Test series against the World Cup champions. They have at last broken their luck when it comes to wins against the Boks on South African soil, and the fact that they go to sea level with the series 1-1 after 2 inland test matches is already a massive win for them. Now we'll take a look at the highlights from today's broadcast when we return, but first let's have a look at the weather.
The Talent Tech Focus will be published across our 3 daily publications, Republikein, Namibian Sun, and Algemeine Zeitung, offering nationwide distribution of A3 tabloid copies and additional coverage through a high-gloss tabloid-style magazine. The Talent Tech Focus will showcase the front-runners in the telecommunication and technology fields, offering innovation to the local market and aiming to showcase both established and emerging players in the areas of tech, software, and digital product and service provision.
You're watching NMH at 1, and if you have just joined us, here are your news highlights. Saudi Arabia says it will open its airspace to all air carriers, paving the way for more overflights to and from Israel, a further signing that relations between the two countries are warming. The UN says 44 West African migrants were rescued last week in northern Niger while trying to enter Libya. The sunny town of Omaruru is expected to welcome more than 150 cyclists who will ride a route through the Irongo Mountains at the Ochohotsu guest farm for the first time ever. Those have been your highlights. Thank you for staying with NMH at 1 and spending your lunch hour with me, Diana Master. Remember to tune in every weekday at 1 p.m. as we take you through the latest happenings in Namibia and beyond. But for now, stick around for this clip which explains the importance of protecting Namibia's coastline. Happy Friday.
Throughout history, coastlines have been of vital importance to human development. Whether you've been a city-state or a nation-state, an autocracy or a democracy, your access to the coast has been your access to the world. It's been your access to trade, culture, and religion. It's been your access to technology, economic development, and food. It's been your access to power. Nearly 2.4 billion people live within 100 kilometers or 60 miles of the coast. That is 40% of the entire human population. The global economic impact from ocean and coastline related activities is estimated to be between 3 and 6 trillion US dollars per year. Coastlines provide us with protection from storms, they provide us with flood control, they provide us with improved water quality. They provide habitats for fish, bird, whales, dolphins, seals, sea lions, and a whole host of marine invertebrates. It's no exaggeration, then, to say that coastlines are a critical part of the modern human experience. But those benefits can also come at a cost. Heavy commercial and industrial activity along coastlines can degrade water quality, impair fisheries, and destroy marine environments. Those impacts then threaten the very benefits we derive from the coast, making marine and coastal health one of the environmental issues of our time. Going forward, countries who wish to rely on coastal environments for their economic needs will have to learn to balance them with their ecological ones. The southwestern African country of Namibia has chosen to do just that. They have chosen to protect their entire coastline as a national park. They have decided that their coastline has more value to them as a continuous protected area than as anything else. Now, that doesn't mean there's no development or economic activity here. Quite the opposite, actually. And I'll get to that, but let me tell you about this coastline first. It is extraordinary. Pretty much the entire coastline is part of the Namib Desert, which is one of the oldest deserts on Earth. Most estimates put it somewhere between 50 and 80 million years old. It stretches roughly 2,000 kilometers or 1,200 miles along the coasts of Angola, Namibia, and South Africa. It's a notoriously inhospitable place. So much so that, in the past, Namibia was known as the place God made in anger. Now, I take issue with that because the more you look into this place, the more incredible it becomes. It's not an angry place, it's a place bursting with life and power and subtlety and beauty. In fact, the extreme age of the desert is one of the key reasons it supports the array of life that it does. Because it's been around so long, the climatic conditions here have remained pretty stable. In ecological terms, stability is a good thing. It means a large and diverse group of plants and animals have had time to evolve and adapt here. But that's not all. This is no ordinary desert. Those same climatic conditions that keep this place a desert in the first place are the same conditions that produce one of its most striking features. The Namib Desert remains a desert because hot, dry winds from interior Africa blow west, where they combine with the cold, wet coastal air brought up from Antarctica by the Benguela Current. The hot air essentially acts like a cap, preventing the cold, wet air from rising and forming rain clouds. No rain clouds means no rain means you got a desert. But that cold, wet air still just kind of sits there, and instead of forming rain clouds, it forms fog. 180 days worth of it per year. That dense coastal fog provides just enough moisture to the Namib Desert's flora and fauna to make it worth their while. Now, in terms of protected areas, like I mentioned, the entire Namibian coastline is protected as one big megapark covering more than 26 million acres and known as the Namib Skeleton Coast National Park. But technically that megapark is actually made up of 4 smaller parks that, when combined, make up the largest formally protected area in all of Africa, the 6th largest terrestrial protected area in the world, and the 8th largest protected area of any kind. That this is an unbroken chain of protected areas is really important because, as we know, landscape connectivity is crucial to maintaining healthy wildlife populations and ecological relationships. It's an absolutely enormous area, and I wouldn't be doing it justice if I didn't tell you at least a little bit about each of these 4 parks. Starting in the north, you've got the Skeleton Coast National Park. Established in 1971, it runs more than 500 kilometers, or 300 miles, from the Angolan border to the Uga River and encompasses nearly 4 million acres of land. That fog we talked about earlier is one of the main culprits for the many shipwrecks you will find in this park. Depending on who you talk to, those shipwrecks are how the park got its name, but others might say it's from the skeletons of the many whales who have washed ashore here. Either way, this park is rugged, it's wild, and parts of it are still unexplored. If you're visiting the southern portion of the park, you're able to explore using 4x4s and off-road vehicles, but if you want to venture into the remote northern reaches of the park, the only way in is via plane. No vehicles allowed. The Skeleton Coast is also home to an incredible array of animals, including desert-dwelling elephants, lions, giraffes, oryx, cheetahs, and ostriches, each of which have to travel incredible distances each day just to find water. Moving south along the coast, you'll enter Dorob National Park, the newest member of the team and the park responsible for quote-unquote completing the protected coastline. It protects more than 160 kilometers or 100 miles of Namibian coastline and was actually converted from a nature reserve to a national park in 2010. The park is home to more than 75 species of birds, totaling more than 1.6 million individuals. After that, moving further south still, you've got one of Namibia's and Africa's flagship parks, the Namib-Naukluft National Park. Even without inclusion in the megapark, Namib-Naukluft is one of the largest parks in Africa, encompassing some 12 million acres. It's also one of the oldest, as you can trace its origins as a game reserve back to 1907 under the German colonial government. This park is incredibly diverse. It stretches all the way from the inland Naukluft Mountains, where you can find the rare Hartmann's mountain zebra, all the way to the coast, where it's home to more than 50,000 wetland birds. You can also find endangered black rhinos here, reintroduced in 2007, along with leopards and cheetahs. Then there's this crazy plant called Welwitschia, which only grows 2 leaves its entire life, but they grow super long and become mangled and eldritch looking. These plants have some of the longest lived leaves of any plant, the oldest of which can be more than 2,500 years old. But the fun doesn't stop there. Namib-Naukluft National Park is also home to the Namib Sand Sea, which has some of the world's highest sand dunes, reaching heights of up to 300 meters, or roughly 1,000 feet tall. And finally, the southernmost of this unbroken chain of parks is the Sperrgebied National Park. Now, technically it has another name, which I'll throw up on the screen now, but Sperrgebied was hard enough to say on its own, so I'm sticking with that. This park is kind of a strange one. Its name in German literally translates to forbidden area because it used to be owned by a diamond company and only company employees could enter it. It actually is still used for diamond mining and public access is still restricted. But despite that, mining only happens on 5% of the park's area, leaving the rest as a sort of buffer zone. So even though people aren't really allowed to visit here yet, the minimal activity has led to an incredibly diverse array of plants and animals. It's actually one of the most biodiverse deserts in the world, containing 25% of Namibia's plant species on just 3% of its land. You can also find gemsbok, springbok, brown hyena, a bunch of birds, and more than 600,000 Cape fur seals here. It's also worth mentioning that Namibia has protected more than 400 kilometers or 250 miles of marine habitat in the Namibian Islands Marine Protected Area. Thanks to the nutrients of the Benguela Current, this habitat is home to a diverse array of seabirds, including penguins, plus whales, dolphins, and Cape fur seals. Also, on either side of the Namibian border, you can find Angolan and South African parks as well, making this unbroken strip of protected areas a transnational affair. So, how did this come to be? Why has Namibia chosen to protect its entire coastline as a national park? For answers, we need look no further than the Namibian Constitution itself. Namibia was one of the first nations on Earth to enshrine environmental protection and conservation into its very governing document. Article 95 of the Namibian Constitution says that the state shall adopt policies which promote, quote, maintenance of ecosystems, essential ecological processes and biological diversity of Namibia, and utilization of living natural resources on a sustainable basis for the benefit of all Namibians, both present and future. That statement represents a commitment from the Namibian government and its people to protect and preserve their country's natural resources. But that doesn't mean they're standing on the sidelines either. Ecotourism is big business in Namibia, and by protecting large swaths of land and animals, not only is the ecological value of these places preserved, but economic value is created. Consider these figures from a 2004 study. It estimated that 6% of the Namibian GDP was attributable to protected areas tourism, and could rise to as high as 15%. 70% of tourism dollars spent in Namibia are spent on nature-based tourism. Between 2003 and 2008, the economic impact of nature-based tourism rose from $240 million to $317 million. The park budget rose more than 300% in that time. The Namibian economy and the Namibian people are reaping the benefits from investments in parks and protected areas. But it's not just national parks either. 45% of Namibian land is protected in some way, but only 17.6% is conserved through formal, federally protected areas. More than 20% is protected through communal conservancies. The rest is privately conserved. There are 86 of these communal conservancies in the country, and they are maintained by the people who live in them, ensuring that the benefits they generate stay in those communities. In this way, conservation provides a way of making a living just like other forms of employment would, and thus incentivizes preservation of wild animals and wild places. Here are just a few examples of how Namibia's approach to conservation is paying off. Namibia is now home to 1/3 of all black rhinos in Africa, its numbers having risen steadily since 2012. Namibia is also home to some of the only increasing populations of lions and giraffes in Africa. And finally, springbok numbers have risen from 10,000 to more than 160,000. Overall, this commitment to conservation is enmeshed in several layers of Namibian society. From formal recognition in the constitution to locally managed conservancies to a completely unbroken strip of protected coastline, it's clear that Namibia highly values conservation and the benefits it can bring to its people. Now, as with parks and protected areas across the world, Namibia's protected areas are not without their threats. We already talked about diamond mining in Sperrgebied, but mineral extraction threatens other parks in Namibia as well. 4x4s and off-road vehicles threaten the fragile landscapes they are built to access. And, of course, the looming specter of climate change threatens an ecosystem tens of millions of years in the making. But none of those things discount the commitment Namibia has made here. By voluntarily choosing to protect their entire coastline as a national park, they have signaled to the world that they are serious about conservation, that they are serious about protecting their natural resources while still benefiting economically from them. In a world where landscapes become more and more fragmented, Namibia has gone the opposite direction, choosing instead to connect large swaths of its land and the habitats they contain. That is why wildlife populations are increasing in Namibia. That is why more and more people are visiting Namibia. And that is why Namibia is a leader in global conservation.
Sport Wrap is a weekly English print edition which unpacks the latest on local and international sports news, printed on Mondays in the Republican, Namibian Sun and Algemeine Zeitung. The Sport Wrap edition publishes news from all sport codes as well as profiles of local and international sports stars.
Algemeine Zeitung is the oldest German newspaper in Namibia. Inside you can look forward to a wide variety of news topics covering daily headlines, news about the economy and the environment, both national and international political developments, tourism in the very popular sports section. The daily What's On branded page is dedicated to articles that on a rotational base cover arts and culture, entertainment, history, science and development, as well as youth-related reading material and readers' letters. Also included in the Algemeine Zeitung on a daily basis is the Market Watch and many more NMH feature supplements.
Chill is Namibian Sun's entertainment supplement. The publication covers music profiles, fashion profiles, music reviews, as well as lifestyle stories. Moreover, the brand also covers music concerts, festivals, and comedy shows. The physical content is complemented with an online music video countdown show, Chill Sessions, that airs on Namibian Sun's Facebook page at 7 p.m. on Fridays.